Well, good morning, good afternoon. This is Scott with ReadySquirrel.com. Today we're going to be covering how to prepare dogs for survival in an SHTF scenario or without rule of law. Got a lot of that going on lately, but let's not talk about that. I hope everybody's doing well today. If you're watching this video on YouTube, you can there'll be a link in the descriptions down below where you can go over to the article to get to some of the charts. If you need to do some of your own computations for storing dry dog food, purchasing wet dog food, etc. Okay, so let's get right down to it. How to prepare dogs for survival in SHTF. I recently had a YouTube follower request an article on prepping for dogs and cats. I think she requested dogs and cats. I started trying to do one article for dogs and cats, and they're quite a bit different in what their needs are. So I decided to split it out. So this article, this video is just on dogs. I've done a pretty poor job of preparing my dogs for emergencies. You know, I always have a 50-pound bag of dog food, and that's about the extent of it. I need to look at this much more closely. You know, we tend to focus on the humans in the household and not as much on the pets. They need the same things. They need food. They need water. So it's time to write a comprehensive article. I'm not a professional. I don't claim to be, but I did do a lot of research for this article. If you see any holes, if you have any suggestions for areas that I missed, please let me know in the comments down below. Here's a table of contents. You can scroll through here to see the headings, and if you need specific information, you can go, excuse me, to that specific subject. Okay, so first thing I would do, 3 things to consider before you start prepping for your dog, some things you need to think about. What are your dog's capabilities? Where are you at? What's your location and the most likely disaster you'll face? These questions might look familiar. It's kind of the same questions we have to ask ourselves. So all dogs are not created equal. So prepare for what your dog can handle when you're planning. For example, let's say an unneutered Weimaraner trained as a hunting dog. I remember I used to take when I lived in Chicago, I had a dog that was crazy. He was like a Australian cattle dog mix, but he was like the size of a German Shepherd. This dog, I loved him, but he was nuts. Like, he had so much energy. He barked at raindrops. He was an odd duck. But I remember going out to the dog park. That's what made me think of this. Is there was a Weimaraner there, and that guy that owned that dog was there every day that I was there. And that dog would run. It was a pretty big park, and it had like a pond in it. And that dog would run non-stop the whole time I was there. I mean, this thing was like amped up. So that dog was an unneutered Weimaraner. It was trained as a hunting dog. It's out running the woods every day. So it's in better condition to handle bugging out on foot, right? In the right location, that dog will probably be able to supplement his diet by hunting. He can find water, and he has the strength to carry his bug out bag. So, 9 pounds of food and emergency kit and a filter to get his water, he can probably handle carrying that. On the flip side of that, a 14-year-old lab with a bum leg, bad eyes, is going to be dependent on you for survival, and they may not be able to bug out because they may not physically be able to do it. And at the best case scenario, you may be carrying all their gear, in which case that's gear you're not carrying for you, because I shouldn't say as we know, that sounds kind of haughty. I don't mean it to sound like that, but you don't want your bug out bag to weigh more than 20% of your body weight. So my guess is if you're going by that rule of thumb, you've already got your bug out bag packed. So either your dog's going to carry it or you are. And if you're carrying it, that means that there's going to be stuff you're not taking for you and your family. Location. If you're located in an urban area, your dog will be more dependent on you than if you live in the woods. Urban areas are more subject to without rule of law situations where stealth is necessary. So if you have a dog that's not trained, that doesn't heel, that likes people a lot, that runs off and barks, it barks at everything. I've got one of those dogs. You're not going to be able to be stealthy. You're not going to be able to go gray man. You're not going to be able to get through a without rule of law situation without being noticed. So that's something to consider. What's the most likely disaster? Consider the most likely disaster as you plan and how you will react. So are you bugging out with a vehicle? Is a hurricane coming and you're bugging out in a vehicle? Are you bugging in, which is a majority of the time, that's what you're going to be doing? Then this is really probably not much of an issue, especially if it's a short-term emergency, because you're already going to have all this stuff in your house for your dog. You probably already have a 20-pound bag of dog food or a 50-pound bag of dog food. You probably already have stored water, and if you don't, store water. Walking out on foot is challenging. Walking out on foot is challenging for us as humans, and it's much more challenging with a dog that's not trained. So prepare to have enough food and water stored for your most likely emergency. Let's take a look at dry dog food and daily calorie requirements. How many calories does my dog need per day? Before you decide how much food to stockpile, you need to know how many calories your doggy will need. The calorie count requirements in the following chart are based on an imaginary average dog by weight. You can use this chart to ballpark the amount of dry dog food to stockpile. The calorie count in the following charts are based on the average imaginary dog that lives indoors. He gets moderate exercise. He or she is spayed or neutered. And in the example, because I needed this 416 calories per cup based on a specific dog food, I used Purina Dog Chow, complete adult formula with chicken. I'm not selling it. I'm not affiliated with it. But I looked into it. It gets good reviews. It's relatively inexpensive, and it's readily available. So daily calorie count requirement by dog weight. I've got dog weights here all the way up to 100 pounds. I've got daily calorie requirements. I've got how many cups of food per day this dog needs based on this calorie count per cup. I've got how many cups for 3 days, how many cups for 30 days, and how many pounds you need for 30 days. So you can crunch the numbers back and forth depending on how your dog food's stored and how many pounds you have. And there's a formula down below for how to do this. Again, you can go to readysquirrel.com. The link will be down below to figure out the numbers. Basically, 30 times dog weight in pounds, divide that by 2.2, add 70, equals the average dog's daily calorie requirements. To get the other number, I then divided the daily calorie requirements by calories provided per cup of dry dog food. This will tell you the minimum number of cups to feed your dog per day. Use the calories or kcalories per cup listed on the dog food bag, and I talk about how to find that down below. The kcals are going to be a little bit different depending on what brand you have. That's why you kind of have to figure this out for yourself to get this number here. Excuse me, and I'll tell you down below again how to do that. Dry dog food that meets the American Association of Feed Control Officials guidelines has calories provided per cup on the packaging. That's going to be most dog foods. Every dog food I looked at Walmart, every dog I looked at the pet store, they all had calories provided per cup on the packaging. AFCO guidelines are the general basis for the nutritional content of commercial pet foods. So they're kind of like the FDA of dog food, if you want. And they also certify livestock foods. So when it comes to calorie count, a working dog, a puppy, a sick dog, a pregnant dog may require a special diet. Check with your veterinarian if you need clarification. So those numbers we talked about up here, especially this 416 calories per cup, is going to be located on the caloric content statement on the bag of your dog food. And this is an example here. It's under calorie content. It tells you the kcals per cup, which you see right here. And it also tells you how many calories are provided per kilogram. And we're going to use that number later to determine how many calories are in a specific size of or a specific sized bag of kibble or dry dog food. As per the Association of American Feed Control Officials, AAFCO, caloric content statement must be located on the dog food bag under the heading Calorie Content. The caloric content statement is a section on the dog food bag where kilocalories or kcals are listed by unit. In this case, it's going to be cups because it's kibble, but depending on what kind of, like if it's a dog treat or something, it could be per can, per cup, or by the biscuit if it's like a dog treat. And calories per kilogram. So calories per kilogram, 3,598 for this particular dog food, and 381 kcals per cup for this particular dog food. And these numbers will be different for every brand. And they will be different within the brand for each different type of dog food. You know how you've got dog food for puppies, for dogs that are overweight, for active dogs, for dogs that are getting older, for dogs with bad teeth, for dogs with a bad stomach, etc. There's a food for everything under the sun. So what's my point? Look at the caloric content statement of your food, and it's going to give you this information here. So what is a kcalorie? For our purposes, they're exactly the same as regular calories. Calories with a capital C. Here's a definition from nutrition.gov. The calorie we refer to in food is kilocalorie or kcalorie. 1 kilocalorie is the same as 1 calorie. A kilocalorie is the amount of heat required to raise the temperature of 1 kilogram of water 1 degree Celsius. Dry kibble pounds to kilograms chart. We're using this to convert pounds in a bag of dog food to kilograms. So we take, let's say it's a 50-pound bag. We're going to convert 50-pound bag to 22.67 kilograms. And then we're going to multiply that by kilograms or kcals per kilogram here. And I talk about that down below to make it more specific, but just wanted to give you an idea of why we're actually looking at that. So converting pounds of dog food to kilograms, look at your dog food bag and find out how many pounds of food is in the bag, convert pounds to kilograms. If your dog food bag is not in this range here, you can go to Google search engine, type in convert pounds to kilograms, and a Google's conversion calculator will pop up at the top of the page, and you can plug in pounds, the number of pounds, and it will tell you the number of kilograms in the bag. And knowing the total kilograms in a bag of food is needed to calculate the calories in an entire bag of dog food and to calculate how many days the bag will feed your dog. So how long will a bag of kibble feed my dog? 5 steps to figure this out. You're going to convert pounds of dry dog food in the bag to kilograms like we talked about above. You're going to take the number of kilograms you converted from pounds in the dog food bag and multiply by the kcal count per kilogram on the bag of dog food, which we talked about. And then you're going to divide the total calories in the bag. In this case, it's 68,541 in the example here, by the daily requirement for your dog. And what that's going to do is that's going to break it down into how many days a bag of dog food is going to feed your 40-pound imaginary dog. So again, there'll be a link down below to the article. You can go over there and you can study this. I don't want to read it too much because it's like, yeah, you're going to be like blah, blah, blah. See a chart above for the average daily calorie count by dog weight, and that is going to be up here. And then again, if your dog weight is different than any of this, just use the formula that I used, and that'll give you your daily calorie requirement. How long a bag? Okay, we just did that. 5 steps, the number of days a bag of kibble will feed your dog. How many cups of dry dog food or kibble are in the bag? This is pretty simple. On average, there's 4 cups of kibble in 1 pound of dry dog food. And this is just a simple conversion chart here, just for your use. So again, 1 pound has 4 cups, and 50 pounds has 200 cups of average size kibble. So yeah, I just said again that the average number of cups will vary by brand. So you could actually test that in your kitchen. Just measure out 4 cups and then weigh it, and that'll tell you, excuse me, how many cups per pound. Calories in 1 cup of dry dog food or kibble. This goes back to the calorie content statement. I kind of beat this like a dead horse, but it's kind of if you don't get this basic thing down, it's kind of hard to figure. And I just wasn't sure how much to focus on this. So a bag of dog food is going to state on there kcal, the same thing as calories with a capital C per cup. And this is just more of a visual aid down here. Common kibble calories per cup. These are, the Kirkland signature Costco brands of kibble, the different types, salmon meal, beef meal, puppy chicken, turkey meal, lamb and rice, Whole Earth Farms. So you can take a look at these foods, especially I think when you're buying them. I'm not talking about reputation. I'm not talking about the quality of the ingredients that are actually in the food. I'm not going to go there. If we're talking about a survival situation, as long as you've tested the dog on your food, the food on your dog, and it likes the food and it doesn't get sick, then for me, my personal situation, that's going to be good enough. I know some people are. That's not good enough. So they're going to want to make sure that the food in their dog food bag is as healthy as the food that they feed their family. Which is not to say I want to feed my dog, poor quality food, but price is an issue. One of the things I noticed when researching kibble and canned dog food is the number of calories and the if the food was branded to be like super healthy, then the cost goes way up. Like you can get Dinky Doo dog food for 98 cents a can, and then you can buy, something like Blue Buffalo, and it's going to be, honestly, I don't even remember what it was a can, but 2-3 times the cost of the inexpensive can of like wet dog food at Walmart. And the same is going to go for the dry dog foods, So don't just go by the branding. Look and see what the kcals are, because I think if you run the numbers on various bags of dog food, like say maybe pick 2 or 3 that you really like, and then run the numbers on the 3 bags and see what's actually the best deal. Because if you're getting more kcals out of 2 bags of dog food that are the same and the price is, similar, it might be better to go with the higher kcal dog food. Okay. And then I also did some common wet dog foods, calories per can, just so you could get a visual on it. Old Roy, I think I'm not sure if this is a Walmart brand, but it seemed to be the less expensive dog food. And you notice here this chicken and rice, 418 kcals in a 2.2 ounce cup. That's pretty good when you consider it to the beef. It's the same Old Roy, and you're getting, that's a substantial number of calories over the beef. The chicken is over the beef. So keep an eye on the label. Take a look and see what you're getting, because it can make a difference. Look at this Purina canned dog food. Beyond beef, potato, and green bean, 442 kcals in the can. Blue Bison, okay, yeah, that's huge. That's a lot, but Blue Bison's expensive. It's kind of like, this is Wilderness Lamb. You can just tell by the names. Wilderness Beef and Chicken Grill. So take a look at the can, see what kind of kcals you're getting. How long can I store dry dog food in my survival pantry? Dry dog food is good for, it'll store for 12 to 18 months in an unopened, manufacturer, the store packaging. And you're better off in this instance of leaving the dog food in the packaging that it comes in. Kibble contains moisture in the form of lipids and fats, which increase the speed of oxidation. It's kind of similar to brown rice in that regard. So you look at the shelf life of brown rice, and that's what it's. I think it's similar. I don't think it's quite 18 months, but let's just say 12 months. I think it's actually like 8 to 12 months. And then you look at white rice that's been stored properly, and you get 30 years out of it. It's kind of the same thing here. Dry dog food has a lot of fats in it, just like the brown rice has, because it still has the husk on it. It's got a lot of fats. And those lipids and fats, they go bad. The enzymes go south. So oxygen-free storage will not eliminate the enzymes that cause the oxidation, the fats and lipids to oxidize. So it's not really worth transferring bagged dog food into Mylar bags with O2 absorbers and then putting them in a pail, because you're not going to get enough extra shelf life out of it, I don't believe, where it's going to be worth the time and expense. An open kibble will last 6 months. So once you open the bag, 6 months or less is what you're looking at. Here I say you can probably get another 12 months out of dog food by storing it in Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers, but it's not worth the time and expense. And there's actually some other issues that we'll talk about down below. Use kibble for emergencies out to the best by date and rotate with FIFO, first in, first out. There are better options for long-term storage, and we'll talk about those down below. Again, dry dog food is one of those prepper foods better left in store packaging. If you store your dry dog food in an airtight dog food bin, lipids and fat will build up in the container, which I never thought of, because we actually have one of those big bins with the circular lid on it that screws off, and we always dump our dog food in there. And because we're using it quickly, I don't think it's been an issue. You know, our bag of dog food doesn't last us 6 months, no way, because we've got 3 dogs. But if we were trying to dump that in there, well, I guess you could. The expense, even with those, because I don't think those tubs are actually truly airtight. What's my point? If you are using those tubs, you're basically, every time you pour a new bag of dog food in there, you're actually pouring your dog food into lipids and fats that are like cling to the sides of the container, and they could actually be rancid. So keep that in mind. It hasn't happened to me, but it's an issue. If you use some kind of bin, don't take the food out of the bag. Just put it in the bin and put a lid on it. O2 absorbers produce moisture in the food package. They can develop mold rings when used in kibble. Consider that kibble is already borderline when it comes to moisture content. O2 absorbers actually add moisture. Kibble has pores that make it difficult for oxygen absorbers to create an oxygen-free environment. That's 1. 2, warning, if kibble is above 10% moisture content, oxygen absorbers should not be used in your storage container, as anaerobic bacteria such as botulism may form. So high moisture, high fat, high lipids, just leave your dog food in the bag and use it for storage, short-term to long-term storage, 12 to 18 months. It's good for a 72-hour emergency. I'll leave it at that. 14 ways to tell your kibble is bad. Let's say you are storing food. You're in an SHTF situation. Are you going to feed it to the dog anyway? Possibly. I don't know what your situation is. Maybe, well, I don't want to say you're going to be eating the dog food, but you never know what's going to happen. So this is some signs. You can usually tell if your food is bad, if your dog food is bad, just because it's discolored. It'll smell sour or rancid, and a dog can handle eating drinking water and food that will make them sick. The problem is you don't really know when it will be a problem. So they could eat food that would make you sick and they don't get sick, or they could eat food that would make you sick and it makes them sick, and you don't want to deal with that in a SHTF situation. So 14 ways to tell your kibble's bad. Food smells off, rancid, or sour. Food is discolored. Kibble is overly moist. Food has mold growing on it, signs of bugs. Your pup won't eat the food. Your pup eats but reluctantly and in small doses. Your dog eats and doesn't act right. Hey, you're going to know. You know your dog. You'll know if it's not acting right. After eating, your dog gets sick. Diarrhea, vomiting, abdominal cramps, lack of appetite, skin rash, and there's other signs, but it's just there's too many. But those are the basics. 6 long-term effects of dogs eating spoiled kibble. In a SHTF situation, depending on how long it is, your dog might be so hungry they'll be less demanding. They're going to eat it anyway. So long-term effects: poor coat and hair condition, hair loss, lethargy and lack of energy, sleeps more than normal, constipation, and a weakened immune system. Is canned dog food good for long-term storage? Canned dog food has a best by date of 2 years, but you can get a good 10 years out of it. So, because as we know, a best by date, that is just when the manufacturer recommends the food based on the highest nutritional value and the best taste. It's dog food. So you can probably get 10 years out of it. You can actually probably get more out of it than that. I think people are scared to say that because you have to use your senses to determine whether a can of dog food's bad. We'll talk about that down here. So wet or canned dog foods are one of the best options for long-term storage. They take up less space than dry dog food. They provide extra moisture in the can for the dog, and less food rotation is required. So let's say you've got an off-grid cabin, you've got a bug-out location. You don't want to be carrying, 1,000 pounds of gear up to the cabin. You've got it hidden, squared away somewhere. Well, cans are going to be good for that because if you can keep it in a cool, dry environment, you can rest easy knowing you've got stored canned food up there. Whereas if it's kibble, not only could you have rodents, rats, bugs in it just because they'll eat through the packaging, but that shelf life is so short, you'd really have to be on the ball and rotating it, especially if it's not at your main residence. So the downside, and I don't know, I've read different things. You can get a can of that Old Roy pretty cheap, but canned dog food can be pretty expensive. So you're going to have to kind of determine how much you want to spend. Is 98 cents, is that going to be expensive? Do you want to feed, $2 a day to feed your dog, especially if he's bigger, maybe 3 cans? Or $3 rather. You got a can, provides, 400 kcals. Your dog needs 1,200 kcals. That's 3 cans. Let's say it's 98 cents. That's $3 a day. That's $90 a day in dog food for one dog. And dog food, especially if you've got it in bulk, it's heavy. That's relative, of course, but how long is canned dog food edible? Canned food in general, including dog food, is safe to eat and retains its nutritional value way beyond the 2-year best-by date. There may be some decline in color and texture, but if appropriately stored, canned food has an almost indefinite shelf life if stored below 75 degrees Fahrenheit. I recently read a story about some food that they found on a shipwreck, in a canned food in a shipwreck, and it was over 100 years old. They didn't eat it, but they did. They tested the microbiology in the food and found that the nutrition had not declined, and there was nothing apparent in the food that made it look like bad to eat. So basically, the food was good to eat, but they didn't eat it. So it just really depends on the environment and the quality of the can and whether or not the can's damaged. So avoid feeding your dog these. Avoid eating cans of human food also that have these signs. Bulging lid may be a sign of botulism, dented or otherwise damaged. I wanted to do an addendum here kind of because, if you got a brand new can of corn and you dropped it in the driveway and it's got a dent in it, that's not going to be bad. Open it for dinner and eat it. But we're talking about, I don't remember when I stocked that food. Maybe it's 3, 4, 5 years old. It's got a huge dent in it. Maybe go ahead and open it, do the, smell it, look at it. If it looks okay, might be okay. It might not. So you're going to have to make that determination. Obvious signs, obviously, a bulging lid, broken seal. The food bubbles when open. Food is moldy. Food spurts out of the can when opened. A hissing sound when opened. Food looks spoiled. Food smells foul, or the can is leaking. So if it doesn't look right, when in doubt, throw it out. That's what I say. Freeze-dried food. It's a dilemma. Is freeze-dried food good food for long-term storage? Or good dog food? Yeah, it is. It's great. It's fantastic. It's outstanding. But it's super expensive. Like, it's the same as with humans. So I think freeze-dried food for the average person has a place in a bug-out on foot situation, or even maybe for a 72-hour emergency scenario. I don't see it as an option for most of us for long-term, food supplies. It's just too expensive. So freeze-dried food is an excellent choice for long-term storage. As we know, you can get 30 years shelf life if the food is stored in Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers. for a maximum shelf life, most commercial brands will need to be repackaged from plastic to Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers. So I don't know. For some reason, the people that are making the freeze-dried pet food, most of them, there are a couple companies that are specifically geared towards preppers, but a lot of the freeze-dried food is more like geared towards people that want their dogs to be super, super healthy, or dogs that have like special diet needs and stuff like that. So they're not really considering us as a market. So you have to actually repackage. So you pay a ton for it, and then you have to spend the money on Mylar bags and oxygen absorbers. So redundant a little bit. Most freeze-dried dog foods I found are more like homemade types of foods or cooked natural ingredients, freeze-dried, not actual kibble. Freeze-dried dog food, if you want to go that route, again, it's expensive. The home freeze-dry units can bust the bank. So you can freeze-dry your own dog food, but you're going to pay one way or the other. You're either going to pay to buy the equipment, or you're going to pay to buy the commercially packaged food. I'm not affiliated with Harvest Right, but and you guys that prep, you know what Harvest Right is. They set the standard for home-based freeze-drying units. I don't know if I think there's a couple other companies out there that make them, but you don't hardly ever hear much about them. So I'm not, here's a list of companies that sell freeze-dried dog food, just so you can take a look at it. I'm not affiliated. I'm not selling any of these, but I can't even vouch for if they're quality or not. But you can go check these companies out if you want to see what freeze-dried dog food looks like. I think you're going to be amazed at how little food you get, how little K-cows you get for the amount of money you spend. It's like, I don't want to say ridiculous, but that's kind of what I was thinking when I read about it. You can make dog food from your long-term food pantry. This was actually the original idea that I had for this whole article, and it just kind of morphed into this everything for your dog type of a thing. Yeah, you can make homemade emergency dog food from ingredients stored for your consumption. Another tool in your pet survival arsenal. Using pantry staples like white rice and rolled oats bypasses the high expense of freeze-dried and canned foods and the short shelf life of dry kibble. So this food is homemade, but you're not making it before the situation. This is something like you're cooking it like by the week, every other day, every 3 days or whatever. The food itself, once you make it, doesn't have a long shelf life, but the ingredients that you make them from do, or most of them do. So there are some situations here, like I'm going to have a recipe down below that actually requires olive oil, and olive oil has a short shelf life. So you kind of have to, you got to use Crisco. You're going to have to use something else if you want to go for that really long shelf life. There was something I wanted to say, and I can't remember what it was. It must not have been very important. Plan to feed your dog long-term survival foods that you store for human consumption, like staples with a 20 to 30-year shelf life. And then I just listed some of the ingredients that you may have in your storage. White rice, whole wheat, not flour, whole wheat, non-fat powdered milk, dried whole eggs, rolled oats, cornmeal. Dried whole eggs has the least shelf life of 10 years. These other things, 20 to 30. Shelf dates are based on foods packaged for long-term storage. Information is compliments of Augustin Farms. One of the things that I wanted to say about this is, and this is just off the top of my head, but I just read this article about the origins of dog food. It actually wasn't invented until 1860. And the guy who invented it came up with the idea of looking at hardtack, which is like a ship's biscuit. It's what the U.S. Navy and the British Navy ate back, during the day. They baked all the moisture out and ate them. It was just a food. It was a bread, a hardtack bread that would keep for a long time. So that was actually what spurred the initial idea for dog food. Dogs prior to 1860 that were domesticated, the majority of their diet came from carbohydrates. Now, dogs are omnivores, so if they're in the wild, they eat meat, they eat what you would term "quote unquote" fruits and vegetables. So they kind of need both. But I think we've come to think of dogs as carnivores, and they're not. They need both in their diet. And that can be somewhat challenging in a survival situation. But my point is, like Victorian era dogs, for instance, they thought that meat made dogs more aggressive. So a lot of the Victorians only fed their dogs carbohydrates. Basically, a lot of these foods we're seeing here, whole wheat, rolled oats, corn-based products. So this isn't anything new. Feeding your dog this kind of diet isn't anything crazy or new. This is how dogs used to eat. Domestic dogs used to eat. So there are some issues with nutrition. We'll talk about that down below. Dog food recipe for long-term storage ingredients. I want to say up front that I got this from, who did I get this from? Did I put this on there? I know it's on there somewhere. This is not my recipe. I got it from somewhere. I mean, if I don't have that in here, I'm going to put it in here, and I can't remember who it was, but another survival website actually put this recipe up like 10 years ago, and I made it. I've got a video down below showing how it turned out. So for this batch of homemade dog food made from staples that are in your pantry, make small batches of homemade dog food as you need it. Add found ingredients to supplement and vary nutrition. Ingredients list for this recipe: flour, oats, rolled oats, or cooked rice, powdered milk, powdered eggs, and olive oil. It's a weak link, I know. So you can experiment with substitutes that will store long-term, like canned lard or Crisco, and water. So here's the recipe. Add ingredients, directions, nutritional content. You know, this is not very high. It's a pretty big batch, and the mixture only contains 2,800 kcals. So you're gonna, if you can, you're gonna want to supplement this, and if you can't, it's better than letting your dog starve. I mean, it's kind of like, can we survive on just beans and rice? Well, if I just ate beans and rice for a year, I would probably have serious nutritional deficiencies, but I wouldn't be dead. And that's kind of how I think of a food like this. And this food, if you want to try it, if your dogs are like my 3 dogs, all 3 of them ate it. You can go over and watch the video that I did on making it. So give it a try, see if you like it, and you can kind of make that determination. At the very least, this is a quiver, an arrow in your quiver of survival skills. It's one more thing you can do to make sure that you're in a better situation. So I'm not going to go over this recipe anymore. Go over to readysquirrel.com, link down below in comments, and you can get the recipe over there. So, homemade dog food characteristics. This food's not high in calorie count. We already talked about that. It's useful as a base for found or foraged ingredients. Feeding your dogs in an emergency or survival situation, you're going to face the same nutritional challenges, as storing food for humans. Fat and animal protein are incredibly hard to come by if you aren't hunting, fishing, or raising animals for food. Fact, all 3 of my dogs like this food. My wife's Bichon tries to herd us to the counter with the homemade dog treats, so they like it. Warning, I am not a professional. Before feeding your dog foods that are not to AAFCO standards, consult with your veterinarian. Homemade dog food, olive oil substitute. Most oils have a shelf life of 1 to 2 years at best, and you may be looking for longer term storage options. So consider using solid shortening as a substitute for olive oil. Crisco and other solid shortenings with preservatives may last to 8 years if stored properly. Other ingredients you can add to homemade dog kibble to get to amp those nutritional profile up, to get some more calories. Actually, no. This is basically, I've got a list of that kind of stuff down below. This is actually vitamins that you can add. B vitamins, 2 tablespoons of brewer's yeast. C vitamin, crush 1,500 milligram tablet daily. Do not supplement fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin D without professional consultation. An excess of fat-soluble vitamins can cause toxicity or can be toxic. E vitamin, 1 time per week. Squeeze 1 200 IU capsule on food. Vitamin E is fat-soluble. Calcium, 100 milligram per pound of dog food. Possible sources: food-grade bone meal, ground dried eggshells, dried ground animal bones, crushed calcium tablets. 16 foods you can supplement in your pet's diet during a catastrophe. So this is stuff, if you've got it or if it's found or you got scraps or you got extra, you can add this into the staple recipe that you made. Sweet potatoes, dry beans, pumpkin, carrots, green beans, peas, apples. So prepper garden is just important for your dog as it is for you. So keep that in mind. Dehydrated peanut butter, cheese, meat, leftovers from hunting and scavenging. Supplement with raised rabbits, raised chickens, meat and eggs, squirrels, deer, fish raised or caught, any meat you can hunt or raise and eat. Oh, there it is. Recipe information above. That's the actual recipe. I must have moved that on accident. It's compliments of practicalprepper.com. So, again, this recipe here is not mine. I took this from this website, practicalprepper.com. So, you can go over to YouTube. Oh, we're on YouTube. You're watching this on YouTube. You can go check if you go to the article, or if you just look, do a search under Ready Squirrel in YouTube. You can watch me do a video making this the survival dog food recipe above. 12 foods not to feed your dog. Some of these foods are obvious, but in an SHTF situation, you may be tempted to use what you have. Plans so you don't have to use any of these foods. Alcohol, avocado, chocolate, coffee, caffeine, citrus, coconut oil. Some of this stuff isn't toxic, like citrus is not toxic. You just don't want to give them too much. The same goes for coconut. Grapes and raisins are toxic. Professionals aren't sure what chemicals are causing the illness, but ingestion of a large number of grapes or raisins can lead to kidney failure. Macadamia nuts, they're toxic. They cause weakness in the back legs, vomiting, and diarrhea. Milk and dairy, eating in small amounts is okay. Just avoid large doses because dogs don't have a lot of lactase, so they're somewhat lactose intolerant, and you know what that means. Nuts are okay in moderation, just don't overdo it. Onion, garlic, and chives, they're toxic. Don't feed those to your dogs. They cause weakness, vomiting, and elevated heart rate. Salty foods, feed in moderation or not at all. Could lead to sodium ion poisoning. I think you'd have to give them a lot of salt. I think just good common sense in that situation is okay. Xylitol, this is one that'll sneak up on you. It's actually a sweetener, and it can actually be found in some peanut butters. And I know a lot of people, like dog trainers, they actually use peanut butter in the training process. So just be careful that whatever you have, whatever food you're feeding your dog doesn't have this xylitol in it, because it causes low blood sugar and can lead to liver failure in dogs. Toothpaste has it. It's just a common sweetener, candy and stuff like that. And this information above is compliments of aspca.org. Do dogs need vitamin supplements with a homemade survival diet? Well, what situation are we in? If you're in a survival situation and you didn't plan, it doesn't really matter if they need it. They're not going to get it. If you planned, yeah, it's probably a good idea. If you feed your dog homemade dog food in a survival situation, you will need to plan for vitamin supplements or additional ingredients at some point. Dogs are omnivores. They eat plants and meat, but a diet of just staples will leave gaps in nutrition without some form of supplementation. It's the same as with us. Dog diet, 2 minerals commonly supplemented in a vegetarian diet: calcium, easily provided with food-grade bone meal, something you can mix in. Iron you can get from beans, lentils, canned sardines, or supplement at the direction of your veterinarian. Fact, commercial dog food labeled complete and balanced or marked as complying with AAFCO standards are formulated to provide all of the vitamins, minerals, and nutrients your dog needs. Okay, so I'm like, okay, I did some charts down here. Vitamins your dog needs in homemade dog food. If you decide to make pet food from your pantry, it's going to be as tough to get well-rounded nutrition for you and your dog in a SHTF situation it is for you. A dog, just like a human, could probably survive quite a while on only white beans and rice. I think that what I was supposed to say was white rice and beans, but I mixed it up. But it wouldn't be healthy. You're going to have nutritional gaps again, we got to use common sense. This is a WROL or survival situation. You're going to do the best you can. But if you're planning, these are the vitamins that dogs need. These are the minerals that dogs need. These are the nutrients that dogs need. I talk about the function that each vitamin, the process or the main process in the dog's body, why they need it. And then I also talk to the right over here about what sources, what kind of foods that you can use. And there's a lot of overlap between minerals and vitamins for the same foods. So you can go over to, again, we're on YouTube. Go down to the link down below and you can go to the article, readysquirrel.com if you want to look at these and jot down some notes. How much water does a dog need every day? A healthy dog will drink on average 1 ounce of water or 1/8 cup per pound of body weight every day. And dogs may drink less water if their food has high water content, like if you're feeding them, wet dog food, but they may drink more if they're very active or in a hot environment. So your dog's going to drink more water in July in Arizona than he's going to, drink in North Dakota, maybe in the winter. I don't know. That's a bad example. You get the point. Fact, the dog can survive if he loses all of his body fat and 50% of his protein, but he can perish if he loses just 10% of his water weight. Water is more important than food for dogs, just like it is for humans. And I got that quote off of petswebmd.com. Canine emergency water requirements for SHTF. It's a chart. I broke it down by dog weight. It's got daily requirement in ounces, in cups. I put in here 3 days supply of emergency canine water in gallons per minute. There I was freaking out. I'm like, 1/4, what, 1/4 cup? Oh, I knew that wasn't enough. No, this is gallons here. That's how many gallons of water you need for a 3-day supply. And then I put how many gallons you need for a 30-day supply of emergency canine water. Link down below to the article if you want to jot that information out. Bugging out with a dog, 3 scenarios. 72-hour emergency kit, bugging in. If you're staying put during an emergency, you probably already have the supplies you need for your dog. If not, it's as simple as having gallons of water and a large bag of dog food that you rotate. If your dog needs a special diet or meds, you can plan for that. 72-hour emergency kit leaving in a vehicle. This is just one step beyond bugging in, a matter of having a dog-specific pack that is ready to grab if you're heading out. 72-hour emergency kit, bugging out on foot. This is challenging. I said that up above, especially if you're trying to stay hidden. This is something, bugging out with a dog, this is something you're going to have to train for. This is something you're going to have to plan for. And if you have a certain kind of dog, you're probably going to have to make some tough choices. 4 reasons not to bug out on foot with a dog, WROL, without rule of law. That's like if you're living in X city and there's rioting on the streets and they're burning buildings down and you say you like X candidate for president and they shoot you in the head point blank. Yeah, that's a situation where you may not want to be running around with a barking dog that won't heal. But without rule of law, a year ago this would have been tinfoil hat subject, not so much now. I think it's just my personal opinion, the U.S. is likely to grow less stable as time passes. Start considering worst-case scenarios when you're planning your preps. You may have to make hard decisions and think about crazy scenarios. So, 4 reasons not to bug out on foot with a dog, WROL. Your dog isn't trained. Will your dog stop barking on command? Will your dog heel or stay put on command? Your dog can't carry their supplies. In this scenario, you'll be adding dog supplies to your pack weight, cutting down on your emergency supplies. Your dog just doesn't have the physical ability or energy. Some dogs were not bred to be active, and some dogs are old. Some dogs are sick. So that's something to consider. Security, this is like the big one, I think. If you're trying to go gray man or stealthy, this will be difficult even with a well-trained dog in top condition. So if your dog is overweight or out of shape, you can get them on an exercise regimen and feed them a healthier diet. If your pup is old or physically ill, there isn't much you can do I can't come up with anything. So if you guys have any suggestions on how to make this situation easier, I'm all ears. And then finally, 13 things to consider prepping your dog for an emergency. This is kind of a mixture of supplies and basic ideas. Dog-friendly bug-out location. Some shelters and hotels won't take pets, so it's good to know in advance. Have a list of places you can bug out to if you don't have, like most of us don't, if you don't have a cabin or a country house you're going to drive to. Consider a dog pack or a dog backpack if the dog has the physical ability to carry its gear. Leash, food for 3 days, see calorie requirements on the chart above. Water for 3 days, see water requirements on the chart above. Consider filtering water for on-foot scenario if it's an option. Use the same backpack filter you use for your water. Holy cow, excuse me. Excuse me. Water weighs 8.34 pounds per gallon, so it's pretty easy to go over the 20 pounds of body weight on your bug out bag, or 20% of body weight on your bug out bag. You don't want your bug out bag to be more than 20% of your body weight, basically. Food and water dish. Consider using Ziploc freezer bags if weight's a consideration. Have a collar with a physical identification tag. Consider wrapping it in electrical tape if it's a WRL situation where you're trying to keep the noise down. And the reason you want a physical identification tag is it's possible that the system's down and that they won't be able to read your chip. Photo of you and your pet so you can prove ownership. A med kit for minor cuts and wounds. Antibiotic ointment, saline wound flush, gauze and tape, flea and tick medicine, and prescribed meds if they have them. Plan for pet medical records if the scenario allows for it. Again, if the scenario allows for it, if you're going in a car or if you're bugging in, not so much for bugging in. I think this is really going to be more for bugging out with a vehicle. Have a kennel or crate, and make sure you get the dog used to that kennel or crate before you use it, because, well, that's just a suggestion, because sometimes dogs freak out if they've never been in one. Cleaning supplies, grooming supplies, I wouldn't bring that, but for some people that's important. Trash bags, paper towels, disinfectant wipes, maybe a small spray bottle with household bleach just so you can clean up after them, especially if you're stressed out. Your dogs read that. They feed into it. They're part of your pack, and you're the leader. So if you're stressed out, they're stressed out. They may have stomach issues and stuff. You may have some accidents. So just having a small kit to disinfect is a good idea. This is a scenario. Consider freeze-dried dog food if bugging out on foot because it's lightweight. You don't need much for short-term emergency, and don't forget about the water you're going to need to hydrate it. And increase your dog's daily calorie intake by 100% if bugging out on foot, because they're going to need the calories. Here's the resources down here. Okay, so that is a wrap-up on this article. I hope you guys got some useful information out of it. I hope it's going to help you to plan for your own pets and get you on the road to emergency prepping for your pooches. I hope everybody's having a great day. I appreciate you taking the time to sit here and listen to me gab. So that's the end of how to prepare dogs for survival in an SHTF situation. Follow the link down below to the article on readysquirrel.com. Thanks again. Over and out. See you next time.